And let's talk about the elephant in the room, China. The reason that oil dropped so quickly and the reason that oil didn't hit $150, $200 a barrel is because of the drop in Chinese demand. What did China do? Did they use their strategic?
Yeah, I think that when Trump went to China, the one thing he got China to do was, buy less oil, because that definitely helps him out in the Iran situation. And he probably agreed not to sell weapons to Taiwan in exchange.
Reserves. Why did Trump convince them in the meeting they had? The Trump-Xi meeting and this China visit. What happened there and what's happening right now? Why are they still not buying up a lot of that oil that is floating for such a cheap price?
All right, two issues here. So let's talk about the Chinese situation first. So they didn't reduce their demand, they reduced their imports. So their domestic demand was probably unchanged, right? They continued to burn through stockpiles. And they don't really have a strategic stockpile that's the government's and then, corporations or industries, commercial inventories on the other side. It's all one thing, right? So when we talk about their inventories, I've always assumed it's just all adding up all the stuff they've got there because it's all kind of belongs to the state, right? But they did take their imports down 4.4 million barrels a day in the last month. And that's a huge amount. And we know that Trump went over there with a bunch of dignitaries from our corporate world. Yep. And so they must have been some quid pro quo. Quid, we'll reduce our imports. They must have gotten something for that. We don't know what yet, but they have to have, right? That wasn't free.
Taiwan.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll give you Taiwan next year just to reduce your oil imports. No, I'm kidding. It wouldn't be that.
Yep, probably.
What else could it be?
So we saw just a week after that trade delegation that the United States suspended arms sales to Taiwan.
Yeah,
whatever that's worth, right?
Exactly.
So we'll see. So that's on one side. The other side is that right now, when you look at the structure of the oil market, all of our markets here in the West, that would be London, New York, what we're really looking at is their paper markets, right? So it's entirely possible for people who have deep pockets and who are willing to sell short paper barrels of oil to drive the price down. They do this with every single commodity out there. They've done it for years with gold, with silver. But I didn't think they could do it with oil, but the data is pretty clear right now.
No, I knew they could do it with oil. They could do it with food. They can do it with oil. You have oil reserves, and the paper market works the same. So as long as you have reserves to flood the market with, and you have the paper markets where you can create an unlimited fake supply.
So Managed Money is a group of participants, and they are now the most bearish on oil they've ever been. They hold about $19 billion of shorts on the Brent contract alone, when the normal number would be bouncing between 2 and 5, right? So
they're going to be crushed.
Like this massive increase.
That's the whole point of what's been going on in oil. At the beginning of this, you probably had the government that was short oil, or some financial institutions. And now they've succeeded through the MOU, through 5 months of the media, saying that there's a glut in the oil market. There's a glut in the oil market. As soon as the Strait of Hormuz opens up, the oil price is going to crash. And so you say all that, and now you got a whole bunch of people short oil. And you now have Wall Street has completely repositioned themselves, and it's going to shoot up.
In that, our prime ETF for oil, USO, has 93% of its total outstanding float, all the shares out, are short right now. This isn't just like kind of short. We're talking GameStop level short. Like this is like if it goes the other way, mad scramble. So the question is, well, who's doing all this shorting? How do you
Chris, I missed it. What are they? Sorry to interrupt you. What are they shorting? I didn't understand.
So there's an ETF out there with the designation USO.
Okay.
And that tracks the price of oil. It doesn't physically hold oil, but it tracks the price of oil.
Got it.
And so there are people out there whoever, if we had access to the data, we'd know, but investors, speculators have shorted practically the entirety of that, all the shares outstanding. If there were 100 shares outstanding, 93 of those are short right now.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's massive concentration of short. So the question arises, how do you get...
We're looking at the situation in the oil market. Just getting ready to compare it to what was going on back in 2009, 2008. This, if you look here, that's 7. That's between July and June 2009. There was a huge spike in open interest. That means in the paper supply of wheat. June and July. Right here, we already knew there would be a disaster in food. Let me show you some of the articles I was having from way back then. Outlook for 2008 wheat harvest continues to worsen from March of that year. And that is why you had this go up here. from March, we already knew that there was going to be, this is a wheat historical chart. So that's why price started heading up, because we knew that wheat would be a disaster. And then here, starting here, that is when the, let's say the deep state, the United States went into overdrive to crash the price of wheat, because there already were derivatives and they couldn't afford to have it go up there. So first they crash it, reposition themselves for a rise, and then they let it soar. So instead of just letting wheat prices go up to like stay here, they make it crash and then goes way up afterwards. This spike in open interest right here, that is this fall right here. They just added like, what is it, 25% supply? Or no, like 1/5 supply of open interest in the futures market. Crashes wheat. Then, starting from here to here, you have the USDA making record harvest forecasts one after another. And they completely crashed the price of wheat. For me, the thinking is that is just like oil. This right here is the equivalent of this right here. We are at this point. And right now, it's going to be one hell of a rally from here on out.
Max,
do you know what the good news is? It's that Trump's last presidential term, and we don't have to see his ugly face anymore. But the bad news is, if the next person supports Trump, we'll see more low IQ individuals in the White House. Well, the possibility of seeing more low IQ individuals in the White House is always a possibility. I mean, Biden, at the very end there, he wasn't very high IQ either. He couldn't do a debate. Yeah. We haven't had great presidential candidates. In any case, this Iran war, I think, is going to crush Republicans in the midterms, because the oil is going to spike in the next 2 months, 3 months for sure. I love inflation when it happens on purpose to drive me out of my property. Well, that's one thing I hear. I sometimes hear he might make the argument that they're doing an energy shortage as part of, the Great Reset, or that type of argument. I'd counter that by, they did the same thing as they're doing in the oil market now, back in 2009 in wheat. And that wasn't for some grand social engineering or anything. It's just, I think the derivative market is far more fragile than people realize. And banks have exposure to it. If there's a huge switch in derivatives that the banks aren't prepared for, it makes the financial system go down. So you have here prices go up, they manipulate it down, banks reposition themselves, knowing that it's going to go higher because they know there's going to be a shortage at this point, and then banks make huge profit as the price of wheat then soars. Same thing is happening in oil right now. Right now, banks have repositioned themselves to take advantage of the situation.
Bearish oil in this environment, and as we've mentioned before, be incomplete if we didn't mention Russia, under a lot of technical difficulties trying to keep its oil going with all these successful attacks by Ukraine on its oil infrastructure. And that alone, just those attacks alone in prior years would have shot the price of oil up. So there's something else going on. I'm in the camp that believes there's an invisible hand at play here. This is something that our government uses markets as signaling devices at this point in time, and that they do intervene. And it's a belief I hold, but I've been watching for a long time. This is odd.
How would they intervene? So you're saying that's using what money?
Maybe Elon's magic money machine?
What money? Have you not been noticing the rampant market manipulation? Everyone's talking about the insider trading. Well, that produces a lot of money, and that's the money they're using to manipulate the market. You manipulate futures up and down, make Trump make whatever comments, and trade off it, and you can get all the money you need for manipulation.
That we talked about. Right?
So
I don't know.
There's because go ahead. There's something doesn't make sense.
Our capital system is extremely corrupt. Supply and demand mean that prices always rise, but can never fall. Yes, I call our entire financial system a bucket shop, in that the bucket in this case is U.S. Treasury markets. You go to buy oil, your money ends up in U.S. Treasuries. You buy stocks, your money ends up in U.S. Treasuries. Now you buy crypto. And you have money in Coinbase, and before you buy crypto, it gets converted into stable coin and put into U.S. Treasuries. That's our financial system. Everything gets put into Treasuries, and that's how we fund our deficit, or barely manage to fund our deficit. And it means that there's a complete disconnect. It doesn't matter how much money pours into the oil markets, in the futures market to buy oil. You can just create more short contracts to match that. It has no impact on the real price of oil.
Well, no, it doesn't, because we know demand isn't down. Demand, the price of oil right now, or gasoline, petrol, jet fuel at the pump, is not high enough right now to drop demand. So demand is staying very, very high, as if there was no war going on. But supplies, we're missing still 8-9 million barrels a day. We had this little flush of...
By the way, any arguments that capitalism is bad with regard to our current system, that doesn't hold any water, because our current system is not capitalism. It's not. 100 years ago, when the United States was like becoming the powerhouse of the world, we had capitalism. Now this manipulated markets we have today, that is not capitalism. When you have, if we had a properly functioning market, oil prices would be higher. We don't have capitalism.
Oil that's going to come out of the Gulf, but that's like a one-time flush. And by the way, a lot of evidence suggests that the tankers that are leaving are beelining for China right now, and it's mostly Iranian oil that they've allowed through. So we got that going on. But that's it. So we're still short many millions of barrels of oil per day. The price should be skyrocketing.
It's still a form of capitalism. Maybe I should say it's not pure capitalism. It's not... Compared to the capitalism we had 100 years ago, today is much, in many ways, much more similar to the Soviet era managed economy, where like the price of oil right now isn't a reflection of reality. It's a reflection of what the United States government wants. That's like Soviet Union. Like, they decide what prices should be, not the market. And if it's government decides prices and not the market, that's how you get shortages, which is what's going to happen in oil. And yeah, it's not a functioning market. It's not the capitalism that made America great.
Inventories are declining. That should be sending price signals, and it hasn't so far. But if that goes on further, we just sail straight into a shortage at max speed at some point.
What's that saying? It's like it happens slowly, but then...
Oh, yeah. Well, price of gold over time. Oh, yeah. This is a website that shows everything in the price of gold. USDA. I think it's just easier to show them the price of gold over time in US dollars. That's more than enough. Price of gold 10 years it's gone up 4 times. It's not, yes, part of it is gold going up, but most of it is the dollar going down.
Suddenly, or something along those...
Probably OnlyFans subscription have fallen in prices. Yeah. Possibly. I don't use OnlyFans, so I'm not an expert there, but I'm not sure what's going on, how inflation is impacting OnlyFans. But I can already predict this summer, fuel prices go up enough that's going to drive down OnlyFans, because fuel is more important than OnlyFans. You need to drive to get food and stuff.
The lines it's like things are just unraveling, something just happening slowly. It's like 08 financial crisis. I remember things are looking bad, it's gonna happen. Okay, is it gonna happen? Why isn't it happening? And boom, it implodes. I just feel like something similar is happening with energy markets.
Yep.
Because the Iranians will probably be looking at the price of oil saying, what the hell went on? We just opened the Strait of Hormuz, we're still attacking ships every few days, the MOU's on the brink of collapse.
Yeah. You think about any rational market, given the situation, like Russia's oil infrastructure is under attack. The Strait of Hormuz is nowhere near open. I mean, there's open warfare where ships are attacked and the coast is being attacked. In that scenario, oil should be at least 100. It's not, because we don't have a real oil market right now. And one reason people aren't coming in and trading it, oil should be 100, and going in there and buying oil is... Everyone who's done that so far has been crushed in the first months. People ever said oil should be 150. Everyone who went in buying, hoping for more oil going to 150. It didn't go to 150, and then it crashed. So they got killed. And so the longs in oil are scared to go into this manipulated market.
Oil prices collapsing. Did we do a shitty deal? There's breathing space for Trump. Something's happening.
Yeah, people used to look at strip clubs as a sign of how the economy is doing. Yes, that is one way to look at it. When people have disposable income, they frequent those types of establishments.
Or they might see it being also manipulated like, let's just hold off for a bit and let things unravel. They might even play a role in letting it.
I believe there should be a ceiling on price increases because the system allows unlimited rise. We will reach a point where money no longer be enough to provide the basics. Well, what happens is they just add zeros to the currency. Your dollar bill will be $1,000 bill, and then a $10,000 bill. That's how it works with inflation. And about putting a limit on that would be like tell the United States government to stop deficit spending, to stop printing money. As long as the supply of money is ever increasing, its value will shrink forever. Yeah, Zimbabwe's currency. Exactly. Zimbabwe dollar. Worth looking at. Graph. Yeah. The value of the Zimbabwe dollar, or the how many Zimbabwe dollars you can buy with like $1 US. It goes up to the trillions. It's what hyperinflation looks like.
Unravel. You know what? Let's cause the Strait of Hormuz to close. Let's strike a few ships for.
Yeah, the futures market do have circuit breakers to prevent huge moves. Is this what you mean? No, those I'm okay with. Like to prevent huge flows. The stock market has them too. If the stock market falls beyond a certain amount, there's an automatic break to prevent like one-day crash. It only delays inevitable though in most cases.
Whatever reason, because they're going through the Omani side. And let's see if the price of oil really is going to be below $70. Because it doesn't add up, or strategic reserves are weeks away or from just going to zero.
Yeah. Look, one of the things we know for sure is that one of the things Trump cares about most and really focuses on is the stock market and also the price of oil. I mean, he talks about them all the time. So it will not have escaped Iranian attention. In fact, it hasn't. Ghalibaf has made direct statements about this, that, Trump seems to care about his precious market. So they know that's his weak point. They know that's what he's focusing on. So if you're smart and strategic, like we know the Iranians are, I would just let us continue doing what we're doing, holding the price of oil down for political purposes, watching our inventories drain. You just let that clock run as long as possible.
I've said it, time is on Iran's side. Every day they drag this out, the stronger their position.
You pull the plug on the whole thing. And if you do that, the United States really doesn't have any reserves to rely on at that point in time. There's nothing to fall back on. It would be silly for us to do that, to drain our reserves down without a clear plan for how we're going to exit. But if we do that, if we drain our reserves down...
It would be silly, but that's exactly what we did back in here. When we knew there was a horrible harvest, they crashed the price of wheat. That means people overconsumed wheat like crazy. And then there was a shortage, and wheat went from $2.50 to $9. That's 3.5 times up. Huge spike.
And then re-escalate, and the strait gets closed down, that's going to be very bad for U.S. markets, for the price of oil, for all kinds of things. And Jeff Curry must have echoed this, right?
Yeah, Jeff obviously he's been very bullish on the price of oil, so he's a bit stunned by how the price collapsed. But he also feels there's something sinister, and he's really looking at China.
I was also stunned. You have to look at the articles I was writing at the time from March. It's just it started going more and more as time went on. It became like it's one of the things that destroyed my faith in U.S. media, that the media could lie so much about food shortages. USDA's India estimates are bogus. India importing millions of tons of wheat. World still facing a global food crisis in May 2009. In May 2009. So, right? Yeah, it's still here. And the manipulated hadn't started yet. It gets even worse as time goes on. Let's see. USDA insanity reaches new heights. You see, that was me. Like these guys, just the reality and what the media was reporting just kept on getting worse and worse. And I was going crazy back then.
What the hell's going on in China? For him, it just doesn't make sense why China is not buying up, importing more oil, why there isn't a spike there with these current prices. He thinks they might have used some of their reserves, even though it doesn't show in the satellite images. They're very secretive about these things. They're secretive about most things. So he thinks they use some reserves.
Wheat might keep for 20 years sitting in the bin, but no one keeps that around. There's a few strategic wheat reserves, like in the Middle East, where they're really dependent on imports. But mostly, people just used wheat as it's grown.
I think underground reserves or hidden reserves, something along those lines. But more importantly, he said, look, that one concerns me less on how they were able to why they didn't buy up the oil when the price was high. But now the price is low. Why are we seeing a spike in imports? So that's for him. If they did use their reserves, they should be restocking pretty quickly. They're very risk averse. So that's what really is bizarre for him. I have other guests that are just talking about the manipulating. They don't have your expertise or that of carry, but they're just looking at the basics, things that are not making sense. They keep talking about the price being manipulated. I'm looking at it, I'm like how sinister is the world? Is there anything historical where we could compare it to this, where the oil price or a commodity was being manipulated to such an extent?
That's why I got this graph, is from wheat going from $2.50 to $9. That is equal manipulation to the oil market going on right now. It was amazing that even as everyone knew there was shortages, like USDA kept rising its estimate. Wall Street kept selling more future contracts of wheat and drove the prices down to $2.50 in the face of a shortage. And then you had the price explosion afterwards. So I have seen something similar to this.
Without anyone knowing, without any government or organization or body admitting to it? Has that happened before at that level?
Well, they had the London Gold Pool of 1969 where they conspired.
That was run by the Exchange Stabilization Fund of the United States, the place where I believe all the rot in the West emanates from.
Meaning they got together, the various governments, and said, look, we're all just going to sell out of our official reserves whenever gold pokes its head above a certain number, and we're going to do everything we can to keep it down. And that's what they did, and they held it for a long time because they just didn't want gold telling the world, telegraphing any sort of loss of faith in the paper currencies. And so that's what they did. But
who is they? They is the I view them as those people associated with the Exchange Stabilization Fund of the United States of America, past presidents, past secretaries of the treasuries, and the people, like he just said, the London Gold Pool, people that were involved with that. That is the oldest conspiracies out there, at least the genuine ones, are the ones in gold. The London Gold Pool was like the first real conspiracy. That is the heart of all this is at the slush fund at the U.S. Treasury.
It was just holding the beach ball under the water. So when they find
name, agency, okay. I did a series of videos years ago on this, and that is, if you want full details, that's where you'll find it. You go playlist on my channel, YouFuel playlist, and what I've been afraid to blog about, the ESF and its history. 5 parts. And that it's this thing that's the root cause of all, like the mass migration, stuff like that, all of it is this bloody thing. It's a big sidetrack to this current video, so I'll go over it afterwards if you still want.
Finally fumbled that and lost it. Gold shot right up afterwards. So manipulation can deny reality for a while.
Well, no problem. I understand. I didn't want to dive into conspiracy rabbit hole either. I was dragged down there, kicking and screaming. And I think that's going to happen to most people on a long enough time frame, whether you want it or not.
But it in case of oil, this is particularly dangerous because with gold is
Unemployment numbers, I feel that just the fact that they usually get huge adjustments to them, like 6 months later, is all the proof you need to know that they might be slightly manipulated for political purposes. Like before a midterm, they are unnaturally good, and 6 months later, they really weren't that good. Yeah, definitely manipulated.
Ayatollah Khomeini won.
Hey, Ayatollah Khomeini, how are you? Yes, they're manipulated.
Pretty much every ounce we've ever mined, we can account for in all of history, right? It's very durable substance and just sits on shelves. So that's a really different case. Oil, as I mentioned before, is, we take it out of the ground, store it, and then we burn it, So it's a very different substance, and it's totally non-negotiable for our economic way of life. It's
Hi, Nico. Sorry. I got we are going by Nico nowadays.
just all these people we've been marketed to for a long time with these green dreams. We'll put up more windmills and solar panels. We don't use oil to make electrons. That's not its use. We use it to set it on fire and move things, jets, trucks, ships, trains, things
Yes.
like that. So it's not a what you would say a fungible commodity. We'll use solar panels instead of oil. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
So we need oil, and there's no easy replacement for it. And by the way, if you start to run out of it in any meaningful way in your society, you run into such serious trouble. Like you have to start triaging. What do we do if we don't have enough? What do we do? Well, the military says, well, we'll take our cut, and then somebody.
I haven't been looking into it, so I can't answer that question. Sometimes it's manipulated, sometimes it's not. When there's a bad number, they try to cover it up. And if there isn't a bad number, there's less reason to try to cover it up. So you're asking for a complex yes-no answer on a complex topic. It's just not possible. I'm sorry. I really wish you could understand the economy with yes-no questions.
He has to make a decision, and I guess we'll get more to the long-haul truckers. It's important for our trucks to keep moving, and then maybe farmers should have some. So they'll go down this triage list, but who falls off the bottom of that is the customer, retail. If there are shortages, we'll be getting rationed first and hardest. Probably.
Yes, consumers get rationed first. One of the most common methods is license plates. Even days, one can drive one day, odd drive another day.
Probably.
It's just manipulating such a commodity.
Economists and traders who read reports are not confused. We agree? There is an elaborate system set up and taught in schools or whatever. And in some of the cases, it makes sense. But the problem is, when the statistics are manipulated, you can manipulate the economists based on that. And that's what's happening in oil right now. It's not an accident that you have all these short position. The entire financial media has geared towards making people think that oil is going to go down, like they did with food prices back in 2009. And it's going to lead to disaster, same as it did back then.
It just would be so expensive. If the US is playing that game, let's say they're doing it without China's help, because why would China help the US, get the US out of a hole they created, and help the US hurt one of China's most important allies and potentially control?
Talking about manipulation, we know that inflation was manipulated, and they've done stuff to manipulate unemployment. Like if someone has looked for a job for such a long time that they've given up, they are no longer counted in unemployment. It's only people that are actively looking for jobs that are counted in unemployment. And just that changed to the numbers. It used to be everyone that wasn't in work, they were unemployed. But over time, they've changed it to debase unemployment numbers to make it look more rosy than it is. That's one example.
The world's most important energy choke point to get leverage over China. It just doesn't make sense. So if the US is doing this alone, maybe with some other countries allied to the US, they'll be very expensive. So that means the US is throwing money away and using whatever's left of its reserves to try to sustain this low oil price. That if Iran knows this or has a sense that this is happening, they'll just keep dragging along, just bleeding the US dry, letting them run out of the reserves, letting them stop their artificial. It
was a pretty nice place to live. If you want to know, there's one guy who does all his blogging walking around like Russia, whatever. It looks like that. It's surprisingly nice. Let me put it to you this way: we're going to watch a video later this stream about some guy going to Paris, and very interesting trip there because he did not expect what he found. In Moscow, you'll find it's the same thing, but in the good direction. It's better than you're expecting. That is the situation in Russia. Their economy is done well, and you'll find it's a much nicer place to live than you expect. It's very modern. And the Moscow metro is one of the nicest metros on earth. My God, it's like a work of art. Moscow metro. Art. Yeah, look at that. That is, this is a metro. This is you just walking to work in the morning. You're going through this type of place.
Invisible hand from manipulating oil prices or suppressing oil prices, and then everything will just blow up. So that could be Iran's strategy right now. Just wait it out until the US screws itself.
Also, I think unemployment rate in Russia is doing really well. They're having to bring in some workers from India because of actual shortages because of the war. Yeah, need more men. But apart from that, yeah, it's going really well for them.
Well, I'm sure you've seen it too. There's been recent reports that China has been ferrying items into Iran, that they've been sort of like having pretty open relations.
I think I've been further south than Moscow. I did a trip to the country, to Dacha, and I swam in a frozen river. Yes, they chainsaw a block of ice out of the river, and then you go in the sauna, get as warm as you can, and you run outside and jump into this frozen river. I don't know why you do this. It's stupid, but I was very drunk at the time. And so I had that experience. And God, is it cold somewhere in the middle of the winter out in the countryside. They have cold days. You know how we have snow days in the United States? Russia has cold days where it's so cold that the children don't go to school. It's different places, different world, different patterns and cultures.
Relationships with them, and there's an economic and probably political and probably military ties going on in there, at least from.
By the way, Russians are very nice, and they don't hate America. They may dislike the U.S. government and the European governments that are doing this, that are propping up Ukraine and indirectly killing Russians. But they don't have anything against American people because they know that when an American comes over to Russia, Russians usually are surprised at how uninformed they are about Russia. And so they know that American people are being lied to about Russia. So they usually don't hold it against average American.
I've been reading and seeing so far. Kind of makes sense, right? And so perhaps they're in it together. You know, what's the old Sun Tzu saying? Never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. Yeah. So if they look at all the same data we look at, maybe.
So what's this about? Certainly does not account for people not looking for it because they can all win with words. I'm talking about government meaning. You are talking about the popular culture meaning. Let's focus on the government uses the word because they defined it and published numbers. Let's focus on our own feelings. Yes. Well, if you want to do a deep dive into unemployment, why don't we do that after this video? So, because I am going to try to put this on YouTube and like that, I'll go into a deep dive in about unemployment after this.
They're thinking to themselves, the Chinese and the Iranians, like, look, if we really want the United States to be, diminished and, less of a threat, what would be really helpful is to allow the United States, encourage them even, to just burn through all of their oil reserves and then pull the plug, right? China comes back, hits the markets hard, pays whatever, oil shoots up, and then, the West has a huge mess on its hands it has to figure out at that point in time. Europe's in trouble, United States is in trouble, Japan's in trouble. It would fit,
Thing is about unemployment, it's not a good metric anyway.
Sound by Soma.
Hey, sound by Soma. Bombs flying in the Middle East again. None at Dubai at the moment so far, though, so that's good. No, but what I was saying, one of the problems with unemployment numbers is that if you have one temp job, it's, as far as unemployment numbers are concerned, if you have a temporary job, that's as good as a salary job. So you can have all people like losing their high-paid factory job or high-paid jobs because of AI, and they end up working at Burger King. And for unemployment numbers, that doesn't show anything. And so you can have the population of a country's situation might have significantly worsened by having a whole bunch of temporary jobs created and salary jobs lost, and you won't see that in the unemployment numbers. It won't show if people are working 2 temporary jobs to make ends meet. It is a useful indicator to see if the situation's changing for the better or worse, if the number goes up or down. But there's a lot of things missing from it. I saw Trump threaten to fully take out Iran. He always doing that. Or, well, sometimes he's saying they're very great people and he's respectful towards them. Then next day he's threatening to take them all out. Trump wants oil flowing out of the Persian Gulf, and this latest escalation is making him sad.
Jesus. So
No, it means that you're answering what unemployment means. It's different from what the government is. Well, the government defines what it thinks unemployment is, and it produces numbers to reflect that. And over time, it changes what it thinks unemployment is. It's fully take Armenians nuke. Well, I did see a video earlier about some people in Israel talking about nukes. And we're very far from that. It won't go from what it currently is, the current level of escalation in Iran, right to nukes. There'll be intervening. They'll go through several tiers of escalation before we ever get to nukes. And I'm not too worried about that right at the moment. There was a false alarm here in the UAE. Everyone got an alert on their phones 10 minutes later. Say, please discard your previous warning. Well, that's easy reason for that. It's because when Iran targets, sends missiles at ships right here, like in the Gulf of Hormuz, that triggers these warnings in UAE because they just know missiles are coming towards us. They don't know it's going to go hit a boat here or continue all the way to UAE. So that's why you're getting warnings. Gave the entire country a heart attack. I'm sure they didn't do it on purpose. It's because UAE is pretty near the Gulf of Hormuz, and that place is pretty active in terms of missiles flying right now on both sides.
Trump really needs to get the hell out of there. MOU or not, deal or not, he just needs to get the hell out of there.
Yep. And listen, there's only, I think we talked about this last time. It's what kind of a loss do you want to take at this point in time? There's no coming out of here with a W at this point. There just isn't. And that's just a matter of geography and the way in which the Iranians conducted the war and all of that. So I don't see that there's much that can be done at this point. If they control the strait, sure, that bothers us. You know, it sets a bad precedent for other straits worldwide, this and that. But
they say the aircraft just struck Iranian missile and drone locations. Yes, coastal radar. Yep, we went over all that earlier. It's not as serious as when there was a full-out war, but Iran is undoubtedly going to retaliate. And how is it going to do that? Is it going to close the strait? Probably find out in a few hours. It's a mess.
You know, if that happens, it would be far worse to re-escalate, have Iran do what it's promised to do, which is dial in on the non-damaged infrastructure in the Gulf states, and really knock out energy production from that region. I mean, seriously, materially disrupt it for a long time. That leads to just a global catastrophe. And then we have to have a conversation about how much debt the United States has and all the derivatives and just how over-leveraged the whole system is, and just what an ugly mess it would be if we suddenly had to contend with a rapid, sudden downshifting in economic output. Our economy is not built for that. Our financial.
If oil went up to 150 and there were shortages, yes, it would wreak havoc. Well, Iran is losing the war. Well, that's not what the MOU suggests. The MOU, you hear neocons screeching about how bad the MOU is. It's Iran is coming out of this with a better deal.
Financial system isn't built for that. Our banking system does not work in reverse. It only works in forward. So that's the alternative.
There's a big disconnect between economic and Wall Street numbers and how it affects the working, suffering in the United States. And GDP also, I will give a warning about GDP. It's a fundamentally flawed metric to judge economies. It's like judging how much someone is worth by how much they spend each month. And if you use that metric, you'd say, oh, Hassan must be worth like 10 times as much as Asmongold because he spends 10 times as much each month. That's the way our current GDP works. And it doesn't. So if the United States, for example, the day that eventually people decide, oh, well, United States can never repay its debt, we shouldn't buy treasuries, and they stop lending us money, there'll be a big hit to our economy because our economy is, the spending comes from borrowing abroad, a huge portion of it. So, whereas someplace like China, manufacturing sector, that can't collapse instantly, unlike the ability to borrow from abroad. That can change pretty damn quickly.
You hope this doesn't go to re-escalation at this point. I mean, tit for tat, it's been fairly measured, I guess, unless you're in the receipt.
Yeah, every time I sell a stock option, I increase GDP, while in reality, I contribute zero. Exactly. It's intentionally done that way, by the way. It's because if you measure that way, the United States is the most powerful economy in the world. And for now, it is true. Because of our ability to borrow, we are still the biggest, but the instant our credit markets get in trouble, when people don't trust the government to repay its debt, it's going to be a big shock to the financial system.
But it just has that sense it could really dial up at any time, particularly if Trump decides he's out of patience and goes for a knockout punch.
Well, I've said about Iran and who's winning the war. Iran holds Strait of Hormuz closed 6 months, it wins the war. And I'd say this still counts, what we're currently going through. Yeah, they showed mercy and allowed the ships that were stuck in the Persian Gulf for 3-4 months to finally get out, but it's going back down. And I think it's going to stay essentially more or less closed until we run into shortages this summer.
Yeah, you could even say the Iranis are tempting Trump. They could be tempting Trump to escalate, striking the ships, trying to enforce their control, which is a red.
About Netanyahu, you just have to look at what the IDF was doing in Lebanon. They were leveling villages with bulldozers when they took over a village. The only reason you do that is because you intend to build settlements. You don't want people coming back, and you want to build Israeli settlements on that land. So there's no way Netanyahu was agreeing to pull out of Lebanon without like radical pressure from the United States. And we're going to need oil shortages to push Trump for Trump to push Netanyahu hard enough to get out of Lebanon, and for this whole mess to finally end.
Trump said, hey, it's a red line. Iran cannot control the Strait of Hormuz. Iranians are like, all right, try to stop.
Nico, you think Iran will lose the war in the long term? Well, we started this war from a position of weakness. Trump started the war, there was little political support for it. That means we had no ability to take casualties or launch any type of ground operation. We had no plan. We blockaded Iran's oil exports. You know that. But we did that a month and a half in. We let Iran export records amount at record prices for a month and a half. Then we blockade them. That is the United States that has no plan. We done that on that day one. We would have been in such better position. So when you have, yes, the United States might be the greatest military in the world, but if you decide to start a war with a fortress countries that is all mountains, that is prepared for war for 40 years, and you do that without any type of plan for like dealing with the closure of Strait of Hormuz, yeah, you're setting the United States up to lose. That is just the way it is. How the war starts matters, and we did not start this war in a good position.
Plus, and they keep enforcing their control, seeing how far the US would go. And if it escalates, yeah, I don't know what coordination there could be as well between Iran, China, Iran, Russia as well, especially Iran, China. Russia has its own problems right now with Ukraine striking their refineries nonstop. But Iran, China, it goes back to your Sun Tzu quote, don't interrupt an enemy if they're screwing themselves or whatever it is, if they're sabotaging themselves. So, man, I hope they're not playing the US. The US economy falls. Jesus Christ. The West falls.
Thing is,
Chris.
I love this analysis. They're thinking that Iran is doing some like great strategic planning. No, Iran is just close straight from Hormuz. Eventually, there'll be a shortage in the oil market. I think that's the level of thinking, and you don't need level thinking beyond that. And as for United States, holding the price of oil down, they've done that before with wheat, and it exploded in price afterwards. We're going to have that happen in oil.
Well, it's a weekend. Want to have a nice weekend, calm weekend. Things are getting better.
Well, here's what, Mario, my struggle is. I always try and make sense out of things, and I might be trying to make sense out of nonsense.
The 12-day war last year actually, in some ways, greatly helped Iran because during the war last year, the 12-day war, they were using GPS in all their missiles as the guidance system. And that's a U.S. system. We can jam that. We can alter a course and make sure their missiles land hundreds of meters from their targets. And we did that during the 12-day war. And Iran was very unhappy with how their missiles could perform. So they switched to the Chinese system, which is just as good. And now we can't jam them at all. And they're hyper accurate. And that's why they've done so much damage to U.S. bases throughout the region. It's that's another way of setting up Iran to win is starting that 12-day war, letting them figure out what was wrong with all their missiles and correcting it. Also, Sadek, what was the verdict on yesterday's stream on Moshtaba being possibly dead? I think he's not dead. I think it's just he communicates by written notes, and that's why it goes to Galibaf's office, and then he does the PDF at his office. That's I'd say 80-90% sure he's alive, but I can't dismiss it entirely. It is true. One thing I will say is that the PDFs coming from Iran's new supreme leader are done in Galibaf's office. That much is sure because of the metadata in the PDFs. But I think that's just because the supreme leader communicates via written notes.
Right? I'm looking for a pattern that fits, and maybe there isn't one, right? Humans are famous. We look up into the night sky and we don't see dots. We see whales and dragons.
Honestly, if I was new supreme leader of Iran, I'd be living under one of those mountains in the missile city. The deepest possible place with like a kilometer of rock overhead. And I would not leave that until we had some definite peace and my safety was assured.
And things, So
That's a good example. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it's kind of a human thing. But the way I see these dots right now, it one rotation of this and looking through this lens a certain way, it looks like the West is under attack, sustained attack, right? You remember that WEF video came out in 2016, you'll own nothing, be happy, right?
Yep.
You'll eat less meat. Surprise, there's this alpha-gal
You'll eat bugs and be happy about it.
tick-borne disease running around, which gives you a meat allergy. Surprise.
Yes, that is a real thing. There is a tick-borne disease going around. If you get bitten by the tick, you can't eat meat anymore. I think that's the most evil thing in the world, and that's intentional. And the people who did that deserve to rot in hell.
Is, ground hamburgers, $7 a pound here in the U.S. now, first time ever nationally. But number 8 on that little kitschy video was the one that caught me. The WF told us that by 2030, Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Why Western values? Why not African values? Why not Chinese values? Why Western values?
Well, we're in the West, and Western values is what we care about.
And then everything that's happened since then, where you see all this mass immigration, that you can get arrested for daring to point out you don't think that's the best thing for your country, where you see we had no borders in the United States. We're mystified. How could we possibly have a border? You see the thing where all the trans stuff has come along, where suddenly it's confusing, and if you can even have autonomy over what gender you are, if parents have any rights, and you just look at all these things. Those are Western values, right? Private property, privacy, the ability to control what goes in my own body. So the vaccine mandates cut against that, etc.
Science, male is male, female is female.
Yep.
Biology.
That's a basic assault on what you call your ground reality, right? Just erase it. But that's how you break a culture, right? Is you attack the pillars, the family, faith, trust, right? Those are all the things I see under assault right now. And so this, what we're talking about, is possibly a dot that fits into that pattern set. It's like, well, if I wanted to really wreck the United States and I was in charge, I would have us drain our SPR and then slam us into $250 a barrel oil as fast as possible, right? That's what I would do. It would be exceedingly devastating.
You see, this is for you, Proton Stale. You might hear this and think that, oh, that's what they're doing, but This is why I really want to have this graph. They did this before with wheat prices. This is about the financial markets. This is about derivative markets. This is about, suddenly there's a disaster in the agricultural markets. Wheat prices should be skyrocketing, but that would make, this is 2009, banks are very fragile. You had that happen, you might have the financial system collapse. So what does USD do? It cooperates with the media to say there'll be record harvest, drop the price of wheat. Wall Street financial institutions reposition themselves for the surge in prices they know is coming. And that's what happens. That is what the same dynamic. I called it week one of the war, that they'd keep a cap on oil prices at 100. That's what they did. Now that it's fallen, with this fall in oil prices, this is the reposition phase. We are now finally, all the bullish people are being driven out of the market. And media has propagandized a bunch of traders to go short. And this right here is where Wall Street banks, they're heavily repositioning for a surge in oil prices. And that's what comes next. And it's nothing to do with shocking the West. And it might, if it does have anything to do with this, it's coincidence.
Yeah, it's just such a stupid own goal. What do you make of you? Because you reminded me of a conversation I had with someone from GB News. I'm really bad with names. Oliver, and he was explaining to me. He did a really good job. I think he's Scottish. He did an incredible job. I've had him on the show twice, explaining to me how he's making sense of what's happening in Europe and the immigration policy in Europe. You're based in the US. Do you go to Europe often?
I haven't been in years, not since COVID.
I will say that places like there's lots of places outside the West that have had some, let's say, advanced morals or like good morals, and of course you have China, India, Japan, the Middle East, Persia, Iran, and I can't go through every country, but Africa is not so much known for it, though. Sorry.
So
it's changed insanely. It's changed so much, and the sense he's making of it is that there's just a war on Western culture. There's a war on I don't know, just society in general, causing division, eroding the structure, the peace.
It's a collapsing empire. The United States hegemony, the dollar over the world. All of this is the result of that. Is desperately trying to prop up the dollar, and it's destroying society in all these ways. Keep the housing prices in the United States from going down by bringing in unlimited migrants, stuff like that.
Systems that we have in place to allow society to function through various policies that just don't make sense. The reason you reminded me of it is, like, what's happening with the Iran war itself doesn't make sense. The way it's being dealt with it doesn't make sense. If they are suppressing oil prices and still gambling right now, that would make it a lot more bizarre. And then kind of reminded me of the immigration policy in the UK and Europe just doesn't make sense. Like, everyone.
Yeah, I think UAE is probably very modern, very nice place. It's had Qatar hosted the World Cup. Yeah, it is though in the middle of a desert and it's very vulnerable. If a desalination plants get bombed, and yeah, you have Iran to the north, and America determined to wage war against that Iran. It's not good for the safety of the region.
Everyone's voting against it. Politically, it doesn't make sense. For society to survive, it just doesn't make sense. That's what your example of the ad by who's WF, the ad that you were referencing.
The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab's
WEF, World Economic Forum. Yeah, I heard WF, my bad. WEF, okay. I didn't know they put that ad. Shit, now I'm a lot more worried. But this is the World Economic Forum. Now you're making a lot more sense. But yeah, it's because the more I have these conversations with like the ones I have with you, I remember our conversation when you talked about that printing machine. That's still stuck in my mind. The weird money printing machine that was mentioned.
I will say that prioritizing your own citizens over foreigners, that just makes sense as far as I'm concerned. I do think that, but there are levels to that. There are levels of mistreatment. So I don't know the exact reality. So I can't comment beyond that on what's going on with workers in UAE.
Elon mentioned in an interview randomly and never mentioned again. But when you start mentioning those things and I start talking to people like yourself, just seeing how the world works, and the private conversations that you have with decision makers are a lot weirder than what they say publicly. You start to realize there is so much we don't know. There's so many discussions being had that dictate a lot of what happens that people really have no idea about. Like, we're struggling
I think healthcare is cheaper in every country in the world than the United States.
to understand it. Imagine the average voter in the US that barely knows where Iran is on the map. All they're going to think about is nuclear weapons. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Gas prices are down. We're good. They barely see the threat that Israel poses with its influence of American politics. And we expect him to go as deep as we do and just try to look at the strategic petroleum reserves, look at the price of oil that doesn't make sense, how the US is gambling with everything, and then look at the bigger picture and other policies that are just sabotaging what we built. It's worrying.
Well, it is. And speaking of worrying, I was just talking with a good friend in the Netherlands on Thursday, and there's a lot of things they could be concerned about, like nuclear war with Russia. But you know what their top concern was? Number one, two young boys, was that there's going to be a civil war in Europe, a race war. That's the number one concern out of all the things you could be concerned about right now.
It's coming. I don't know if it'd be a war because one side still heavily outnumbers the other.
Right.
That's exactly what the guy I mentioned to you. I need to find his name because I think you'd like him. But that's exactly what he mentioned to me. He said, Mario, like this is, and another guest said to me, also from GB News, he's like, okay, so this is him, Neil Oliver. I knew it was Oliver there. Neil Oliver, really good guy.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
they
I've
said
seen
the
stuff. He's
worst
great.
thing, he's incredible. He's so good and eloquent, just like yourself, just a Scottish version, like so good at explaining things. But he said that the worst thing we could do is get into civil war, go on the streets and protest or resort to violence, because that kind of amplifies the division that would help whoever's trying to cause that division. Because causing division just allows policies to pass that gives them more control. When I say them, whoever's in control, and it's usually corporations, wealthy people that control these large companies.
Elite. It's easy to just say the Epstein crowd.
Government officials, etc. But yeah, that was a good point you made. And if you see a lot of the policies that come out that lead to more oppression and centralization of power, they always come out after violence and after fear is created. So get a lot of illegal immigrants, let people go on the streets, let them riot, let them burn a few buildings, then introduce policies that lead to more control and centralization. And did you see that pattern play out at the beginning?
The pattern does play out, but overall, the Epstein crowd is losing control. Trump being elected is one sign of it. All these alternative parties in Europe that are outside the system that are challenging it, that's another sign. The Asmongold of the world covering stuff that used to be hidden up.
Someone first told me about this. I'm like, come on, no, I stop with this conspiracy. And I see it again. I'm like, okay, it makes sense, but I don't think it's happening. And you see it again and again. And then you start trying to make sense of, okay, why are they still bringing immigrants when 60, 70% or 80%, whatever?
Yes. Why do they keep on bringing in immigrants when the vast majority of people are against it? In a democracy, that's not how it works normally. Yeah, the whole British government saying, oh, we can't stop these little dinghies that are coming across the channel, when during World War II they managed to stop the Nazis from coming across.
Of Brits just don't want illegal immigrants anymore. Why don't you just stop it? And every leader, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter who it is,
Yep.
the same policy. Says they're going to stop illegal immigration, come into office, continue the same policy as the previous prime minister. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm this kind of a guy. If somebody says that something's going to happen and then it happens, I think maybe they did it, right? So all of these policies that the WEF has been talking about are basically unfolding at this point in time. And look, we're going to get a great reset, whether we ask for it or not, right? And I think their position.
Yes, we're going to have a currency collapse of the dollar, euro, pound at some point, and that'll be a great reset. It sure will.
Is, and I could actually straw man it and steel man it and make a decent argument for it, which is like, look, our debt levels are at a level now that's basically unfundable.
That is the goal. The goal of the Epstein elite, the globalists, whatever, is when that happens, when currency collapse happens, the pound, the euro goes on, that they manage to retain control of after the resulting chaos. That they somehow avoid the angry mobs coming with pitchforks and coming for their heads. That they somehow still retain control. And letting a bunch of immigrants that have no idea what's going on with monetary policy into the country, yeah, that furthers that goal.
Anybody who even studies it for 5 minutes figures it out, right? Oh, we'll never pay this back. Okay, if we're never going to pay our debts back, what are the options? Well,
others are worse off than we. Yes, but just look at the debt of the United States government, and especially if we have oil price spike and you have a recession because of that, it's going to get even worse. At some point, the interest on the U.S. debt is going to be more than tax revenue. After that, it's a debt spiral and the collapse of the dollar. It's inevitable. We're getting near the point that even you don't even need to believe in conspiracy theories to believe that the United States is reaching the end of its lifetime. If we reach the point where the United States can't pay its debt, the dollar is finished.
You either default on it, that's bad, the whole system kind of breaks, or you inflate it away. But we're running out of room to really inflate it away without it just getting away from us. So if a great reset...
Yeah, Japan's debt is bad. I'm not saying yen is probably going to collapse too at the same time. When paper currencies start collapsing, one is going to drag down the other. You're going to have a bunch, I think, just like the ones, Russia, China, that have bought huge amount of gold and that have a strong economy and that not a lot of debt, those currencies will survive. But the others, I think it's going to be, everyone is going to rush to buy gold and to get out of the dollar and paper currencies.
That's going to happen. If it's going to burst, well, why not be on the controlling side of that story rather than just on the...
Yes, if only, as Nico said, if only the UAE and other Arab countries would take refugees in. Well, maybe they see what type of refugees they are and they don't want them.
Receiving side. And so I think that's the plan. They're like, look, we got ourselves into a bit of a pickle here. There's no real way out of it. It's not a problem. Problems have solutions. It's a predicament. There's no way to satisfy all the demands that we've put out there.
You say the West is the one who originally destroyed those countries, but the same people, the globalists that are bringing in unlimited migrations, are the ones that are bombing Libya and creating them. The people of Europe didn't want to bomb Libya. Do you think the people of America cared or even know where Libya is on the map? Do you think they supported or Syria? That's the deep state, the political elite. The same political elites that are bringing in the migrants are the ones wrecking countries around the world. It's you can't say that. I'm not going to blame the average American for what the deep state is doing without their knowledge. I can't. Okay,
we're going to have to recast those some way. What do? Well, it must be super attractive to think that we're this close to creating sort of a, God in a box, super AI that could help us parse through all of this and really manage it well. But if you strip away, one of the subscribers at my site put it really well. He said, AI is just communism with the promise that this time we'll have better planning committees. It's the same idea. A very tiny elite controlling all the decisions for everybody else.
Yes, that is their dream, that AI will magically save them from their collapsing empire, that produce some means of population control. It won't work.
See that the elites are in possession of better information, better intelligence, better brains, better genetics, whatever they think they have compared to everybody else. So that's where we're going. But maybe we're just at this point where, we just went too far. We kicked the can down the road. It was always just, maybe we'll pay this debt back later. Everybody knows it's a lie, right? You talk to any economist who knows anything, they'll admit it. They're like, yeah, the United States has no intention ever of paying that.
Even anyone you ask to know anything about economy looks at U.S. debt and knows that's completely unsustainable. That the collapse of the dollar will happen at some point, just because of the level of U.S. debt.
It's government debt's back. It just doesn't. Never will. It's going to roll them over continuously and make them larger every year. Full stop. Okay, that's just a math problem at some point. That's all. It's just simply a thing where, technical lights out on that story is when your interest payments consume 100% of your tax revenues. Then you're out, right? Because now you're borrowing basically more than 100% of what you need to spend on a yearly basis. And it just doesn't work.
And a recession or an oil shock can accelerate that moment where, because an oil shock that boosts prices, that causes inflation, boosts interest rates, and it lowers government revenue because it hurts the economy, causes companies to go under. So we could be much nearer that point where tax revenues interest payments exceed tax revenues, then people think,
that goes away from you really quickly. So I just get the sense that there is something really big coming. I think a lot of people sort of share that, like this is an uncomfortable moment in time. And, yes, there's the AI thing, which is a hugely disruptive story all on its own. Then there's this.
yeah, but a whole thing about colonization or whatever, you have a few bad people that do something, and then you want to ascribe that to all people in Europe. It's just like if there's a black man who commits a murder, and then you say all black men are evil. Well, there was a white man that went to Africa and did fucked up shit. Now all white people are evil? No, it doesn't work that way. The people that do the bad shit are the bad people, and they're the ones who deserve to get punished. And the people in Europe, like a lot of people in Europe, they are descendants of peasants. They have centuries of quasi-slavery in their history too. And they don't deserve to have their culture destroyed because of the acts of a different elite white man in a different part of the world. It doesn't work that way. Assign guilt to the guilty parties, not to the innocents.
Energy thing, which just doesn't make sense. And then there's these mysterious policies that seem to be designed to really displace the entire cultures of the West. There really aren't any similar programs operating in Africa.
By the way, I completely support that there are a group of elites that are fucking up the shit in other countries, like this Iran war, and like Syria before that. I've on this channel, I've gone into, I think the genocide of Christians in Syria was one of the worst things that's happened in the last 20 years. I definitely want that to stop too. So I want those places over there to be peaceful again, and the people in Europe to go back to those now peaceful places. That is my solution.
Right now, or Asia. It's really in the West, meaning they want to replace the existing cultures and they want them homogenized. They want them borderless. They want them, all this stuff. And these are all plans that people have talked about for a long time, but they're actually happening. So to me, that's how I have to fit this whole Iran war into that construct and say, okay, if these people are string pullers, if they have been very carefully laying the groundwork to do this Western deconstruction project, how does Iran fit into that? And there is nothing like an energy shock to really wobble a nation or a continent.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild summer.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough of this video for now. It was really interesting, and we talked about a lot of things that weren't related to the video too, but that's fine. And as long as it's interesting, I'm good with it. Anyway, we're heading for an oil shock this summer. Expect the oil prices to reach 150 by the end of August. Maybe I'll be wrong by then that'll be by the end of September, but since I've said it now, I'm going to stick with it by the end of August. Then that's what will finally cause the Iran war to come to an end and Trump to capitulate to Iran. In the meantime, just look forward to the oil shock this summer, I guess. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch or kick our Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.